And I'm not sorry that I did. I'm not sorry that one time when I went to the restroom, there were voices still in there. I'm not sorry that nothing happened. Well, a lot of people would think that it would. But the truth is, nothing happened. And I'm not sorry that I had to use the men's restroom at school. That's all.
I've been a father, husband, Linux systems engineer for 20 years, small business owner twice over here in Tip City. I moved my son to be near his grandfather, so I'm going to warn him. Okay, quick. So I've heard a lot of discussion in previous town halls, and I just want to jump right to the meat and the bones of it. I hope, based on the discussion tonight, that the future community town hall will extend invitations to GLAD and the Lambda lawyers, the two amicus briefs that were filed in the case of Adams versus School Board of St. Johns County, number 18-13592. That is the binding opinion and case law that is currently being discussed in our community town halls. Thank you. Have a great day.
Next is James Knapp. The pen is running out. Sorry, I got that wrong this morning.
Through the chair to the board, my name is James Knapp, and I am chair of Trans Ohio, which is Ohio's first and largest transgender organization. I know you've previously had some contentious comments in the public comment period about transgender rights here at Bethel High School, and I'd like to sincerely take this time to thank you for listening to all that. I know it's hard to listen to. Madam Chair, I'd like to offer Trans Ohio and myself as a resource to those of you who still have questions about how to best support your transgender students or what it is to be transgender. In addition to nearly a decade of volunteer service with Trans Ohio, I am also an attorney, and I have experience drafting and reviewing policy, and I'm happy to help any school system in Ohio along the way. I'm here tonight specifically because Trans Ohio was contacted by two different parents of transgender adolescents who currently attend Bethel High School, and they want their children to continue to be supported here at school. It's important to remember that regardless of personal ideology or opinion, that schools have a duty to protect its students from harm, including harassment. Guidance under Title IX is clear, as is case law here in Ohio. Trans students have the same rights to use the appropriate sex-segregated facilities as their cisgender or non-trans peers. I'd also like to remind you all that despite what those in opposition may believe, this is not a case about strange adult men walking off the street into the bathroom to use the restroom and toilets next to 5-year-old girls. That's simply not true. What we're talking about here is adolescents of the same age using restrooms and changing facilities while at school and during gym period and afterwards during sporting events. Bethel has a long history of supporting trans students in the past and has had an inclusive policy for years now, regardless of current rumors. I'd like to thank you for standing up for those transgender students and urge you to continue to do so, because there's more students affected by these meetings and this policy than you realize. There's more students at Bethel that are out right now, and they're watching us. What's said in this room will impact them not just now, but in the future. The Transgender Day of Visibility is March 31st. What a wonderful message it would be if Bethel High School sent out an unambiguous message of support to trans students by not changing policies that are working. Thank you. I feel the remaining time.
Good evening, Board of Education members. I'm here to represent the estimated average of 14% of students that attend Bethel who receive special education services. As a district, we have made some improvements in special education services over the years. When our kids first started attending Bethel about 8 years ago, we were told by some administrators, Bethel ships kids like that off. And that, the person, them, was my kid, as they pointed at my kid. Bethel knew my daughter was coming to school that school year before the school year started, yet continued to put her on the higher level floor of the elementary. What that meant for my family was that my husband or myself had to carry her on our back up the stairs. I don't know how many fifth grade students like to be carried by their mom or dad up the stairs, not mine. The solution proposed was just to keep her in an IEP room all day. In case you are not aware, that is illegal and also not in the best interest of our daughter or her peers. Inclusion was all she knew. She needed her peers and they needed her. Ask her classmates. They love her and she loves them. We have many here fighting over bathrooms. I won't even go into detail about the horrible bathroom accommodations that have been made for our daughter. In a closet bathroom with no lighting, laying her on a hard elementary school desk with her arms and legs hanging over the edges. Thankfully, Miss Diedrich listened when I cried in her office and sobbed, and it was improved in middle school. My daughter has always needed to use the staff bathrooms or the nurse's office bathroom. I am thankful for a soft place to lay her for medical care. It's not something I take for granted. If you are questioning the 14% statistic I gave you, ask yourself, why is that? Is there something I don't know? I listen to most all board meetings, or I attend in person. You may not be aware of that. I have heard several times the districts say, we don't have room for special education kids, so we need to send them to other districts. I am excited about the Early 5 program, as early intervention is incredibly critical. But I guess I'm wondering, and I think a lot of special ed parents are wondering, why is there room for students that we don't really have responsibility for, but there aren't room for special needs kids in our district? Why are we shipping kids with Down syndrome and autism to other districts? Why don't we have room for IEP preschool kids, but yet we're adding kids to our district that we're not even responsible for? Preschool IEP kids are our district's responsibility already. I have heard it said in board meetings it's because we don't have resources at Bethel, so we send them where the resources are. That sounds like a really great answer. Unfortunately, the truth is, Bethel has chosen not to have those resources. Funding is not given for special ed resources. Teachers do not have the supplies they need or the resources they need to adapt and modify things for students. There also aren't trainings so that they know how to diversify education. If I can make interventions in my homes to help my kids, there's no reason Bethel can't also. I encourage you to ask any of the students shipped off, quote unquote, how often administration or staff has checked on them from Bethel. Often Bethel isn't even attending the IEP meetings or the meetings of the students. It's really heartbreaking. How is that a valuable education? Do they not matter? If they do attend, they have minimal knowledge of the student. How is that protecting our most vulnerable? When Bethel was a school of 600 or 900 in a building that was inaccessible, it's slightly understandable. But now we have 1,800 students in our district, and we are building a building that is one floor. Bethel can no longer use the illegal excuse that the building is inaccessible anymore. They can no longer use the excuse we are a small district. According to federal law, IDEA, also known as Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, there is something called the least restrictive environment. Let me educate you if you don't know. LRE means that to the maximum extent possible, school districts must educate students with disabilities in a regular classroom with appropriate aids and supports alongside non-disabled peers in their school they would attend if they did not have a disability. Basically, we have been breaking the law for a really long time. We have to make changes now. This is not a new law. It was enacted in 1994. It has since had 2 revisions. I'm asking you to research the following, each individual board member. FAPE. I know a lot of teachers are scared of that word, but it's not scary at all. It actually protects some of our most vulnerable. LRE, IDEA 2004, do your own research. Create a special needs council that directly works with the board to collaborate. The council, along with administration, teachers, both special ed and regular, and parent representatives, to develop a plan to meet the needs of all students. Ask for specific.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Melcy Swanson.
I'm Chris Swanson of Bethel, graduate class of 1968. My remarks are on two topics. One, this microphone and freedom of speech, and two, the concept of courage. The board's February 14th meeting was well attended, featuring a majority of citizens' testimonies staunchly opposed to the board's proposed resolution. Everyone present at that meeting was able to see and hear everything that transpired.
Yep.
I have family members who were unable to attend that meeting, as well as this meeting tonight. They watched that February 14th meeting online, and they complained that while the board's microphones worked well,
Yep.
and their speech was at a volume easily comprehended, the microphone used by the public was at a volume about 1/10 as loud. Adjusting their computer's setting sound system master volume to 100% still required pressing their ear against the speaker in order to barely hear each citizen's remarks. Is it possible that after allocating some $20 million for improving Bethel schools, funds were not available to purchase a quality microphone? Freedom of speech matters little if the Bethel Township public, not present here this time, cannot hear online.
Hear, hear.
My immediate family strongly supports the U.S. Constitution and has had 6 members serve in the U.S. Armed Forces. That Constitution, to which we all took an oath, guarantees in Article 1, read in part, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech. What does abridging mean? It means to abbreviate or shorten. Could it be successfully argued that giving the citizens gathered here a faulty microphone is a violation and does abridge our freedom of speech? Congratulations and kudos to whoever fixed this microphone stand. Has the volume control been fixed as well? I'll check this out, and if the online taped record of this meeting is still of poor quality, I'll be back. On the topic of courage, it takes courage to do what is right, regardless of the consequences. Now, courage is the quality of mind and spirit which enables us to meet dangers, opposition, or challenges of life with fearlessness, calmness, and firmness. My concern is not merely expressed by my opposition to the aforementioned resolution. This is only the beginning. Soon, any trans or other identifying person will be participating in girls' sports. The school will be teaching critical race theory, and eventually this will all end with the imposition of all aspects of this education given over to Marxist theory. And if my time permits, a rhetorical question: does the board recognize that the last meeting did not have an Admiralty flag? As a free-born, living, breathing human being, and now a member of the International Common Law Court, I have pledged my oath only to the American flag. You'll see the American flag in the hallway. Did you bring this one because you don't know the difference, or because you do?
Next up is Michael Noe.
It is a pleasure to be here to speak to And a couple things, first of all. It was the most interesting meeting I've ever attended. A couple things I would like to say. I apologize to everyone that said horrible things to you at the last meeting, even though no one else would say that to you. Damning you all to hell was quite an experience, considering I don't know how you all believe, but I know that as society we're very diverse. Ooh, that is loud. I'm sort of, I don't know if we really want the microphones to be working completely last time because it would have really shown how much hate there really was by people that weren't from here. So I researched almost everyone that spoke. Most people weren't from here that were speaking. It was not a lot of local people. There are some people that do have written statements that they pulled offline. Also for the meeting or proposed meeting, some of the names that were mentioned, I Googled them while I was sitting over there. I suggest you do the same. There's a long list of newsworthy stories about those individuals and their lack of impartiality. A lot of questionable things. Something else that I also experienced, a lot of people were saying that they moved to this community because they thought this was a safe haven for them. You know, they were concerned about this and that. But if you really look back at history, there was a really famous video that went around in the 60s and 70s, actually probably more like the 50s, it was in black and white. And they sounded just like them. As far as, you know, the community's changing, why did we move here? It's just horrible that someone that doesn't look like us is here in this community. It's crazy. A couple other things. First of all, I spoke with a lot of you, and all of you, no matter your standpoint, were kind. I understand that you have different backgrounds, you have different faiths, and some of you even said that you have family members that were part of this community as far as the LGBT community. I'm not going to ouch you because there's no reason to. But just because you have family doesn't mean that you can vote against one part of the community and support your family secretly. Also for the people that are here that are speaking, thank you for speaking for some of us, because as far as it goes, something else that was said in the last meeting was the majority rules. And that's really not the case. It may help you as far as an election, but we also fight for the people that need that support when a lot of laws, a lot of people, a lot of hate that are sort of there aren't speaking. So I would say that no matter how this goes, no matter the love, the hate, the everything that's here, it is your legacy. And I know you're talking about lawyers, I know you're talking about going to court. It's going to be expensive one way or another. But at the same time, I think of the kids. I know some of you are fighting for these kids, some of you are fighting for those kids. But it's amazing the perversion of men's wholeness when it comes to what kids are doing in bathrooms. It's amazing the imagination I've heard in this audience, because I would never even imagine that in my life. But there were people that resigned, there were people that left, even this district. But we don't talk about them as much as we talk about what could be, but what isn't. Thank you.
Next up we have Martin Nichols.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you, board members of Bethel. I really tip my hat to you for the job that you do. And Thank you for your service.
My name's Martin.
I'm a friend of a family that attends here at Bethel. I'll make my statements very brief. I'm going to speak from a book that has been in our conscience for a long time. So that's all I'm going to do with no commentary. Genesis 1:26-28. Then God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish and over the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." So God created man in his own image. The image of God he created, male and female. He created them. And God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth." Isaiah 45:9. Woe to him who strives with him who formed him, a pot among earthen pots. Does the clay say to him who forms it, "What are you making?" Or, "Your work has no handles"? Proverbs 26:6. Train up a child in the way he should go. Even when he is old, he will not depart. Matthew 23:15. Woe to you, scribes, Pharisees, hypocrites, for you travel across sea and land to make a single proselyte. And when he becomes a proselyte, you make him twice as much a child of hell as yourselves. The Word of God, our Creator. Thank you.
A, Melinda, is it left or right? I'm sorry. Is it left? Let's, okay, thank you.
Hello. I am actually I went to high school. I graduated in 2004. I would like to applaud the board for trying to make the restroom policies in the school inclusive and including a lot more people. Because when you make restrooms exclusive and don't include everybody, you create a society, and particularly a school, where it's very easy to single out single out and to bully students. And I think that is very important that a school try to find a policy that does not make it easy for students to be bullied as part of the policy. Because ultimately, you want the students to learn to include everybody and to learn to love one another. Because ultimately, they have to be citizens of each other eventually. And I'd like to thank the board for trying to make that possible. So please make sure that is part of your efforts to make the community, to bring the community together on this issue, so that everyone can feel like they are at the table. Thank you.
Is it Molnar? Just clarify, is it Molnar?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. Read
I am a therapist at David's Place, which is a LGBTQ drop-in center called Daybreak, which is a youth homeless shelter. Familial rejection is one of the #1 reasons why we see homeless LGBTQ youth, something to sit with. To all of the trans students that have spoken today, yeah, pause my time.
Okay, check. All right.
for the trans students who are in the audience and who attend the school, I just want to say I support you and I'm here for you. And I'm really glad that you exist, and especially Tobias. I was moved to tears by what you had to say. And your lives matter, and you're important, as well as, you know, the intersection of children with disabilities, you know. So Listen has released a lot of studies related to inclusion policies and how they proportionately impact straight men. So we have more inclusion, proportionately straight men. Bullying, targeting, you know, especially transphobic and homophobic bullying is proportionally directed at straight boys. So to those on the board who recognize that Title IX is an actual law, thank you for your logic and reason. And for folks in the room that are still struggling to make sense of this, I really invite you to challenge your fixation on children's genitals.
Again, you need to make comments there for me to check.
That's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Mulner. Next up is Dr. Ray Gillespie. Sorry, I don't know your name. I apologize. Not to hurt the names tonight, I'm sorry.
No, you're totally fine. So I wanted to kind of offer like a different perspective, and one that I hope is actually useful to the board in a different way. So I am someone who works in higher education, and I'm also someone who, in addition to their work in higher education, is also certified to do Title IX and civil rights investigations. And so I received training by the state of Ohio, as well as the institution that I serve with the pleasure of. And so I think that I might have an interesting perspective just in terms of what the law says, but also things that you might want to be sort of familiar with as you're considering access for gender diversity in terms of bathrooms, locker rooms, etc. So in terms of the ability for trans people, and particularly trans students, to use restrooms, locker rooms, etc., that align with their gender identity, that's been something that the U.S. Department of Education actually authorized back in 2014. And so at the time, specifically, the Department of Education said Title IX's sex discrimination prohibition extends to claims of discrimination based on gender identity or failure to conform to stereotypical notions of masculinity or femininity, and the Office for Civil Rights accepts such complaints for investigation. Similarly, the actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity of the parties does not change the school's obligations. So that is something that was affirmed by the U.S. Department of Education back in 2014. And probably most of us are very familiar with the Obama administration's actions in 2016, where they issued a Dear Colleague letter affirming the right of trans individuals to use sex-segregated facilities as well. As someone has already mentioned here this evening, the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals, which governs here in Ohio, has also affirmed that ability for trans students to use those sex-segregated facilities. And I would also like to remind folks that the Trump administration actually said specifically, quote, all schools must ensure that all students, including LGBT students, are able to learn and thrive in a safe environment. Similarly, as with the Obama administration and with the Trump administration's specific quote in that instance, the Biden era Department of Education has also confirmed that Title IX protects trans students, and they recently issued a notice of interpretation less than a year ago, specifically clarifying that, and the Department of Justice has also affirmed that, specifically citing the Supreme Court's case of Bostock versus Clayton County, Georgia, which affirmed the rights of LGBTQ+ people in the workplace. But ultimately, what I hope that y'all will also to make this for anyone's ears very careful. What I would also like to remind folks is that when we're debating the rights of trans students to use something as simple as a bathroom, something everyone has to use, everybody has. That is something that does negatively impact the mental health of trans students. And we know the impact that that has. We know that that causes higher rates of anxiety, higher rates of depression, higher rates of suicidal ideation. But we also know that it causes students to have more absences at schools. We know that it lowers their participation in extracurricular activities. We also know that it lowers their GPAs. We know that it reduces their educational aspirations, so their intent to actually attend a community college, trade school, etc. And frankly, there are kind of more pressing issues facing today's children. As someone who works in higher education, I have seen that difference from pre-pandemic to now. I mean, the number of things like being concerned about face-to-face learning, how to make sure that kids can still do that, and the importance of face-to-face learning, how to make sure that folks are understanding the variety of social skills that come with just in-person interactions. That is something that I see today's college students in the past 2 years really struggling with. And ultimately, putting kids be kids is also equally just as important. And I would hope that y'all really consider the fact that this has been long-standing since 2014, and that I hope that my perspective can be helpful in you all's conversations that you'll have. And I kind of want to go back to something at the very beginning of this meeting, like several hours ago, right? With the elementary school and kindness speak. Can we all just be kind? I think that's a good message, right? And maybe one that we should all consider. Thank you so much, Ayla. It's been a time.
Amy Morrow.
Hello, thank you again. My name is Amy Morrow, and I am the founder of Medical Freedom Fighters of Dark County. And I actually came here from Dark County because I realized that all schools in Ohio is looking at Bethel for the choice that will be made. And so I stand here because I believe we need to go with what the majority want. Today, the parents are here as a majority saying no. They are saying that we need to stand for righteousness and do the right thing. And let me remind you that those of you that are here on the board, that your seats are not secure, that you can lose your seat, not only what the people want, what the parents want. And you know, the word Bethel means holy place. It means a place of dedication, and I believe that God wants to do a work here. And you know, we need to love. As Christians, we need to love. And having that said, but we need to do the right thing and stand for righteousness and stand with the majority of the parents and protect the children and secure the children. It's about them. It's not about, keeping them separated or bringing them, about bathrooms, but it's to do the right thing and to do what the parents want and the majority of what the parents want and to stand for righteousness and to do the right thing. Thank you.
Jeff, is it Morford?
Good evening. How are you doing? I see there's much bigger issues that you have on the floor tonight than the issue I bring to the floor. I appreciate everybody's strength on this and the strength that's been taken to handle it. My issue is not this. And I apologize if I'm wasting your time. New issue, just for a second. I'm involved in a Regis annexation over in New Carlisle kind of thing, and I'm just here to tell you, I'd like to think everybody knows about it, but if not, I just want to let you know there's going to be a lot more students coming here from the New Carlisle area. The piece of property I'm looking at, there might be 300 houses, which I'm adjacent to, and those students are coming here, the buses are coming here, the traffic's coming here for construction over the next 2 to 5 years, let us say. I think there's a big annexation coming into Hubert Heights that will bring more students to this district. I'm not sure about that one. I'm only sure about the one that's my neighbor. It's going to take, it's a two-bladed sword. Sure. The more students come here, the more tax dollars you get, and you can put up new lights or something. I don't even have the concept of what it takes to run a school, but I do know that more students here. There's been issues of classroom sizes or in a trailer, you know, I don't even know these things, you know, I'm sort of 7 years old and I'm past this, my kids are gone, you know. But anyway, good luck. God bless you all, this is a tough one. What to say, I'm sorry, some might think I'm wasting your time. You know, people are worried about busing, they're worried about traffic, they're worried about school, obviously. Me personally, I'm worried about the habitat over there. I'm worried about the environmental impact on my property. And again, you deal with the government, and no one, I've contacted 30 different officers, as some of my neighbors have, and no one's got the answer. That's not my job. That's somebody else's job. I'm not responsible. And then 3 years from now, when if a mistake has been made, well, that guy's out of office. He made that decision. He's gone now. Or I couldn't do anything about it because the law said they have to allow an annexation. It's not right. The big money men are coming in and taking over. I mean, between 270 and 40 is just bizarre. I can't. Thank you. Good luck to all of you.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Catherine Schultz.
Hi there, my name is Catherine Schutte, S-H-U-T-T-E, for anyone that would like to Google that.
I apologize.
I am a 1991 graduate of Bethel. My son was also a 2011 class of Bethel. I want to make the point of the message that we are sending our young girls that are being told that they just have to accept this. We teach our children, and we are taught as women or as kids growing up, that we need to be aware of our surroundings, that we need to feel safe, we need to feel comfortable, and if we're in a situation where we don't feel comfortable, we have a right to speak up and get out of that. We're telling these young girls now that it doesn't matter. Your safety and your comfort doesn't matter. What you need to do is sit down and shut up so we can accommodate a very few other people. And that's not the message. We'll keep this really short and sweet. Bethel has a long history of not protecting its female students. Bethel has a long history of its female students being preyed upon by people in this school, including teachers, and it being ignored and swept under the rug. It's time for that to change. In the 30 years since I graduated, these girls weren't being protected when I was in school, and they're still not being protected, and it's up to you guys to make that change.
Thank you, Ms. Schutte, and I'm sorry for not getting your name wrong. Donna B.
Okay, once again, for the third time, I am before the board with the same questions and no answers. I have emailed all of you several times, 9 times to be exact, and not one of you have, well, 3 of you have not even given me the respect of a return email. I have had a personal conversation with 2 of you and asked you why you are choosing this policy. You say it's the law, even though we have given you written facts as to what the law really is here in Ohio. Even though we collected over 1,300 signatures to walk it back. Even though we had over 200 here at the last board meeting, clearly someone has an agenda. Over the past 3 months, myself and many in the community have done our homework to educate ourselves on Title IX, given you the facts as to what the current law is in Ohio. A lot of people you're not taking that into consideration, and we've been through Title IX several times. So you really got to get into it and dig into it. For the life of me, I cannot understand why any of you would want a biological male to be in the bathroom with a biological female or vice versa. What we are here tonight to talk about, it's called privacy. Our expectations of privacy for persons of the opposite sex is so profound as it's being found all across our laws, including in laws pertaining to our schools and in our courts, and decisions describing our personal privacy as to also a constitutional right. The violation of privacy is humiliating. Bathrooms and locker rooms are the only place we can go to undress and to use bathrooms outside of the presence of the opposite sex. People can dress or groom however they want, but start that part over again. People can dress or groom however they want, but the clothing choices of a person of the opposite sex does not change or eliminate the other's right to privacy. In your own mission statement, and I quote, "I support the community and the support of the community is critical to our district success, and it will be earned through effective, open, and honest communication." The events that have transpired over the past few months surrounding the handling of the Bethel restroom issue are nothing short of dishonest, wrong, and it's an embarrassment to the district. Your lack of respect for Bethel parents, community members, stakeholders of this district deserve better. You have proven the privacy and safety of all Bethel students lies entirely in the determination of myself and our community to defend it, and we will. So once again, I ask you to walk this back for the third time. I ask that 3 board members to resign because you 3 are choosing to keep this policy in place. It is not the law in the state of Ohio. You do not represent our community values. You no longer have the respect and the trust of many in the community. You do not have the privacy and the safety in place for all Bethel students. We can and must respect everyone without violating the privacy of anyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bean. Jamie Spangler?
Good evening, and thank you for this time to speak. My name is Jamie Spangler. I want to talk about the decision that was made and implemented in January regarding students being allowed to use the restroom of the sex they identify with, as opposed to their biological sex. This decision is alarming to me and affects the safety and health of my kids. It is a violation of their privacy and makes them extremely uncomfortable. I am opposed to this decision and ask you to walk this decision back. I have a son and a daughter at Bethel who both aren't comfortable using restrooms under the newly adopted policy of the school board. Let me address the safety concern. It has been stated by board members and or the superintendent that there aren't enough staff members to monitor the restrooms as it is. The teachers and staff are already working at max capacity with lack of substitute teachers, teachers being out sick, COVID, teachers forgoing less than planning period to teach another class, etc. For the board to try and levy yet another requirement on them to monitor the restrooms isn't a realistic expectation, nor feasible for them either. Also, the SRO at Bethel is one person. She can't physically monitor all restrooms at all times. Health concern. My daughter now does not use her restroom until she gets home because she feels it's humiliating, violates her privacy, and is not safe for her to use the restroom. It's not healthy for her to hold it all day and wait until she gets home to relieve herself. A privacy issue. When my daughter and any of our students are using a restroom, they are in a very vulnerable position physically, and now she does not feel she has the privacy to do so. The idea that when my son uses the restroom, there could be a biological girl walk in and see his body parts is also a violation of his privacy. The school board and superintendent, with you making a decision in the dark that goes against protocol, procedure, and law is not acceptable. There was never a vote taken by the board in turning away from what had been the practical unwritten restroom policy of the district for years. By making this new decision, you are not discriminating against my kids. My kids' rights and the rights of Bethel students don't end where other students' rights begin. What about the right to their privacy? What about the right for them to feel safe at school? I was not informed by the school that the restroom policy decision had changed. I found out after the decision was made and implemented. Why did I have to find out such an important decision was made for my teenage daughter? Why did I have to research and read about this in the news? Where's the partnership with the school board and the Bethel parents and community members? We have and continue to reach out to you, and we have proposed alternative solutions to decisions that you face. Why are we being ignored instead of working together with us? This decision you made directly impacts our children. To date, 18 states and the District of Columbia have enacted laws and statutory language and/or agency regulations prohibiting discrimination in education on the basis of gender identity. Ohio is not one of them. The lack of transparency, lack of regard for the process in which a policy has to be voted on according to Ohio state law, the fact that the decision was done with no parent or community involvement is inexcusable. You are making decisions that directly affect the safety, well-being, and health of my children and Bethel students. Alternative solutions. I propose that instead of this policy, that the school board allow those children who identify as transgender to use a private staff or nurse restroom. This is logical given the majority of the children at Bethel use the restroom of their biological sex. This is also reasonable to accommodate the majority of students, as opposed to accommodating a handful of students while disrupting the majority of the students. To summarize, I'm asking the board to walk back this decision. Our children should not feel their privacy could be violated, their safety compromised, there is a risk to their health or an increase in anxiety because they are now forced to use a restroom with someone of the opposite biological sex. Being a kid is hard enough. Why are you adding yet another burden to them? Since this is not required by Ohio state law, then why would you make such a decision in secret and not even ask the community? Or now that the community has assertively voiced what we want for the safety of our kids, why will you not humble yourselves, listen to us, and walk this policy back? One reason we've been given for this decision was that the price of litigation is too costly for the school. I'm here to tell you that you can't put a price tag on the safety, health, privacy, and well-being of our children. Thank you for your time.
I am here again to convey my concerns about allowing males and females to use restrooms and locker rooms of the opposite sex, especially without any written policies. But first I want to be very clear that I believe all students have a right to attend school free of discrimination, bullying, and harassment. If a boy wants to wear a dress or a girl wants a flat top, they have that right. Those individual choices have no effect on my children's safety. Furthermore, I am not saying transgender females will commit rape because you allow them to use a girl's restroom. My fear is how much easier it will be for a predator or a prankster to enter a restroom or a locker room and sexually assault a child because you refuse to set boundaries and write policies. Please do not twist what I just said into saying I think Bethel is filled with predators. This free-for-all stance you have taken means anyone from any school district visiting our school for any type of event has the same restroom privileges you have granted Bethel's transgender students. With that said, how would any biological girl using the restroom or locker room know whether a boy or man entering their restroom is a transgender female who just didn't dress feminine that day versus a male wanting to use a girl's restroom for sexual gratification? And let's not forget, this applies to the elementary building and children as well. So now we have 5-year-old girls sharing a restroom with males as old as 18. We shouldn't ignore the issues this brings for the boys as well. Boys are not comfortable having a female see them standing at the urinal, and there is a much greater chance they could be falsely accused of some sort of sexual assault. Again, nothing states a transgender male must dress like a boy, so any female could walk into the boys' restroom. All it would take is for a girl who is mad at a boy over a breakup to seek revenge by fabricating a story. We would all be naive to think any accused boy would be treated innocent until proven guilty. Some have argued they shared restrooms with the opposite sex at some point in their adult lifetime. Maybe at a concert to avoid long lines for the women's room, or maybe at Walmart without knowledge a biological man is in the next stall. Therefore they ask, so what's the big deal? The difference here is this is a school filled with young children and adolescents. We are talking about children who have the right to privacy and to feel safe at school. While it is bad enough or see private parts of the opposite sex at any age, at any time during school or school events. I am very disappointed you have dismissed so many valid concerns parents have expressed to you. The Department of Education Civil Rights Data Collection reported 14,938 documented incidents of sexual violence in K through 12 during the 17-18 school year. This is a staggering 50% increase from 2015. Furthermore, we know many assaults go unreported, so we really do not know how high this number truly is. But based on this statistic, I do not feel we are over-exaggerating the potential risk of sexual incidents. All of this division within the school district, name-calling, anger, frustration, petitions, etc., could have been avoided if you had just acknowledged the concerns of both sides, then develop a solution that works for everyone. When parents were scared for their children's safety of school shootings, you eased their minds by installing preventative measures such as Mylar on the entrance doors, hiring an SRO, locking the doors, and requiring photo ID for entrance. When the school strategic plan had to be written, you sought input from students, faculty and staff, parents, and the local community to ensure everyone played a part in how the school will educate our children to become productive citizens of society. But now when parents come to you with the sincere fears for their children's safety and fighting for their children's rights, a school administrator used the internet to label them as a circus. This circus consists of the same people you collected information from to develop Bethel's strategic plan. If you feel so strongly that students have the right to choose which restroom they use, then why are you afraid to implement a policy to address restroom usage? The middle school handbook addresses how many times a day and per week a student can be excused to use the restroom. Why not add who can use the restroom? You argue Title IX mandates transgenders be allowed to use the bathroom and the sex they associate with. Therefore, we do not need a policy because the law covers it. The law covers sexual harassment and discrimination, yet we have policies for that. Bethel follows the CDC's COVID guidelines, but you wrote and implemented a policy last January that provides mask guidance. Your rationale seems to contradict your actions on when a policy is justified. My plea has not changed from last month. Please walk back the current stance on allowing males to use female restrooms or locker rooms and vice versa. Then let's work together as a community to develop a solution together that provides parents assurance we have done our best to mitigate the risk of sexual assaults, harassment, bullying, and discrimination for all Bethel students.
I'm reading for maybe she had to leave. So, first, I keep hearing that the trans community is nice. Nobody's arguing that fact. It's not about being nice, it's about safety. I also keep hearing about the trans students deserve to learn in a safe environment, deserve to use the bathroom safely. Does the 1,700 other students not matter? There are times in our lives that people who abuse authority attempt to move boundaries or take away something to create a new normal for the people around them. There are members of the board and school administration who feel it is within their power to remove boundaries and create a new normal for our students, or for our school and our children. You as a board have taken the safety from our children. You have removed their right to privacy. You have given them a false sense of security that can be shattered in an instant. The parents, grandparents, and many other members of this community are here to defend our children and take back what you have ripped away from them, their safety. We are here to ensure those safety and privacy boundaries are given back to our children. Above anything, our children's safety and privacy are our top concerns. If they are not safe, they cannot be taught. Members of this board and administration have failed our students and no longer deserve to make decisions concerning our students here at Bethel. Since January 10th, our community has been coming together to do the job our board was elected to do. Your mission statement says you will provide, and I'm paraphrasing, a safe, secure setting while showcasing community values. Do you, as a board, feel you have done this? I don't expect an actual answer because you still have not answered my safety concerns from January 10th. This is your mission statement, yet I have witnessed 3 of you continue to neglect the safety and privacy of all students in this district. This community has made clear to you what our values are over the past 3 months, but you are choosing to ignore them. Additionally, number 3 on your belief statement is the support of the community is critical to our district's success and will be earned through effective, open, and honest communication. You have not been open, you have not been honest, and you no longer have the support of this community. Everyone deserves privacy and safety, yet our students are being given none. At this point, you may as well do what you do best and just copy what Mara Loma Elementary in California did and remove the gender signs from the restrooms. Without a written policy or even a written procedure in the student handbook, that is essentially what you've done anyways. I would also like to know what your policy will be for overnight trips and camps. Do you have one? Have you even thought that far ahead or just powering through because it's what you want and you don't care about the pesky details that keep our children safe? What are the plans for the partitions mentioned in the FAQ? Are there really any, or was that just to get us off your back? There have been more than enough times to get quotes and start working on steps towards safety and privacy measures in our school facilities if you insist on sticking to your extremely loose interpretation of our women's rights laws. All of these things, overnight stays, privacy measures, co-ed sports teams, consequences for not following the approval process to use different restrooms should have been considered and implemented before you decided to interpret our policies differently. You have written a policy and a procedure for use of the school credit card, but not for student safety and using opposite sex restrooms. That tells me you are more worried about the almighty dollar than you are our children. As a board, you may not have done your research before insisting this policy be interpreted differently. However, the community has presented multiple times that these changes are not necessary. Accommodations were made, which is what is required of you. The federal law has not changed. Neola said Ohio has not enacted any laws or regulations on the basis of gender identity. This decision is on you and you alone. So you and you alone will be held responsible in the event of a tragic assault on any of the students in this school. And no, that is not implying that I'm worried about a transgender student assaulting my child. I'm worried just for that student as I am my own child's safety. I blame you for allowing this unsafe environment at Bethel, and you will be responsible if something happens. You know there is nothing legally binding you to this decision, but there you sit. I will leave you with a quote from Maya Angelou: do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. You now know better. We have done the work for you. If you refuse to step up and do better, then step down. You have lost the respect of this community.
Woo! Woo!
Next we have Ron Corley.
Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I would like to acknowledge that Nicholas is live streaming because I did email all of you except you, Tina, this morning to ask that the audio be corrected for tonight so we didn't have a repeat of last month, but here we are. Anyway, Thank you, Nicholas, for live streaming so everyone can see it. When using the women's restroom at Maya recently, I heard a knock and then a man's voice call out to see if anyone was in the room. I responded, just a minute, and he waited outside the room for me to finish up. Sorry. Wash my hands and exit. I thanked him as I was leaving, and he gave me a kind smile in return. I told him it was all clear, he put up the close sign, and he went in to do his job. He respected my privacy as a woman. As a man, he knew that walking into the women's room while I, or any other biological woman, was in there would be uncomfortable for all of us. He He provided for my modesty. Now, he wasn't coming in there to hurt me. He simply had a job to do, and he needed to enter the room. But he made sure no women were around first. Even though his motives were pure, it was still a line he did not cross. Why is this relevant? Because your male janitorial staff would do something similar on the Bethel campus. A male custodian would not just walk into the girls' room unannounced to do his job. Why? Because it would not provide for the privacy and the modesty of any biological female students in there at the time. He would ensure the room was empty, put up a sign to tell girls not to come in, and do his job in private. When you adopted your restroom policy earlier this year, I sat down with my daughter and I explained to her what it means to be transgender. I then asked her how she would know that any biological male in the women's room with her at school had been approved to be in there. How would she know she was safe? Her response, well, I guess I wouldn't. And she's right. She wouldn't know. How could she? And why is this burden being placed on her and hundreds of others? It's because you, as the board and administration of the school, have failed her. Your policy has the potential to desensitize children to potential danger. While I do not believe a transgender student causes any more risk to her than any other biological male in the girls' restroom, the fact still exists that restrooms are divided according to biological sex for a reason. They are divided in the military. They are divided in prisons. They are divided in malls, restaurants, and shopping centers. They are divided in offices all across the country. Again, this is not about transgender students, but bathrooms and locker rooms are the only places we can go to undress or use facilities outside of the presence of the people of an opposite biological sex. Biological sex is the only reason for separate facilities like locker rooms and bathrooms in the first place. You are training children to ignore their fight or flight instinct. You are instilling in them that what they once saw as a potential danger is now okay. It isn't. How will they know that the same situation in a different space could be unsafe when you were training them here to just go along to get along? The answer? They absolutely won't. Women's privacy rights do not depend on what a man believes about anything. Women's privacy rights do not cease existing or suddenly spring into existence solely based on what a man believes about his gender identity. People are free to believe whatever they want about the nature of gender and express themselves on those beliefs within reasonable limits. But their beliefs cannot change or eliminate another person's right to privacy and modesty. You have heard from your own Neola rep that you are not legally obligated to commingle sexes in your restrooms and locker rooms. The Ohio Attorney General, Dave Yost, is currently working with 19 other state attorney generals to prevent Biden from reinstating policy that Trump overturned regarding federal overreach and changing wording surrounding Title IX to include gender identity. This has not been settled at a federal level, and Ohio has no law in place to enforce your policy. Walk back what you have enacted. 3 of you are also being asked to resign your positions. You have undermined the faith and trust of the community who voted you onto this board. I have personally spoken to hundreds of Bethel residents over the last few weeks. They are outraged at what you have done in darkness. We will have the numbers to remove you, but you can save us the time and trouble by removing yourselves. Either way, you need to go.
Woo! Woo!
You no longer speak for your electorate. And if anyone here tonight who lives in the district would like to sign the petition to remove 3 of them, I'll be out in the lobby by the tables after the meeting. Thank you.
I had said thank you, Mrs. Crowley, and I just noticed I passed the time a little bit ago, where we passed our 1 hour. Ms. Grant said she would like to make a motion to extend the time to allow everyone who's put in a slip to speak. Is there a second? Mrs. Donahue has seconded. Ms. Hagan, will you call the vote, please?
Mansfield,
Yes.
Donahue, yes. Mrs. Grant,
Yes.
Sebastian,
Okay, the motion carries 5-0 to allow all people who put in a slip to go ahead and speak. So hopefully it won't take the full 50 minutes, but you never know. And we're currently sitting at 10. Okay. Next up to speak is Jim Crowley.
Thank you for the chance to speak. My wife and I are trying to raise a preteen daughter in a toxic culture. I'm here to speak for her. We're committed to, yet sometimes exhausted by, the effort to guide our little girl to become a confident, courageous, and humble young woman. Trying to keep her safe, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally as well. This culture has succeeded in hypersexualizing our children at every turn. This has robbed many of them of innocence and the chance to be a kid. We fight the battle of what she sees on the TV, what she hears in music lyrics, where she goes, and who she spends time with daily. We've worked very hard to instill in her a sense of self-worth that is not tied to how she looks, what she wears, and what others, especially the opposite sex, think of her. Ever since she was in 2nd or 3rd grade, we have had to hunt to find school clothes or swimsuits that weren't designed to be sexy. She has no online access to her phone, and we only allow access to the internet in public areas of the house. I tell my girl that no one gets to mistreat her or disrespect her. I tell her that she doesn't owe a boyfriend or anybody else anything that makes her uncomfortable. I let her know that her body is her own, that her nakedness and her sexuality is a gift from God to be reserved for and enjoyed within the bounds of marriage. All this effort and planning and forethought, and this board, casually and secretly decides to rob her of the basic right to safety, privacy, and modesty in the most vulnerable situations that society bombards our kids, especially girls, with the idea that they have to be sexy, that their value is to be found in how they are perceived by men. But sex is no big deal. Everyone's doing it, and the risk of being promiscuous or dressing like you are limited. We fight it every day, and this school is supposed to help us fight. What message are you sending to my little girl instead? That she doesn't have the right to privacy? She doesn't have the right to keep her nakedness from people of the opposite sex? That to even strive for privacy and modesty, she's either a bigot or at least closed-minded? Are you kidding? This stance is supposedly covered under the school's anti-harassment policy. So are you telling me that my little girl denying members of the opposite sex access to view her naked body is harassment? If today she doesn't have the right to keep men from looking at her naked body, what's next? Will she have the right to keep them from touching it, forcing her into sex acts? This is not a political issue drawn along party lines, as some would have you believe. This is basic decency that has been accepted for thousands of years. Even Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, far left feminist advocate, understood this when she penned the majority opinion regarding Virginia Military Institute to admit women. She stipulated that VMI would need to, quote, afford members of each sex privacy from the other sex in living arrangements, end quote. Why? As she wrote in an op-ed at the Washington Post while she was a law professor at Columbia, I quote, separate places to disrobe, sleep, perform personal body functions are permitted, in some situations required, by regard for individual privacy. Individual privacy, a right of constitutional dimension, is appropriately harmonized with the equality principle. Privacy and equality are not mutually exclusive. In fact, upholding the former is essential to preserving the latter, especially for women. Women still face unique social challenges. Taking away a woman's privacy from the male form and the male gaze directly by forcing them to share spaces with males is a step backwards in the fight for equality. I would ask this board change the stance back to the original policy or resign your position. You're supposed to represent the constituents that put you here, and this does not reflect our values at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crowley. Kelly Sodders, I believe I saw leave. And Amy Dills, I think I saw leave. Audrey Badd.
Okay, so first, it is my understanding that the teachers and staff have been directed not to get involved in the restroom issue. At the February 14th board meeting, chemistry teacher Stormy Maluski spoke out in favor of the policy. When was she reprimanded and what was her punishment, is what I would like to know. Many kids may not even be aware of the restroom issue at all. I imagine a good portion of the parents aren't either. Just because students are not coming to the superintendent or principals does not mean that they are fine with the opposite sex in restrooms, locker rooms alongside them. Most would never speak up. From shyness, awkwardness, being unaware, fear of unacceptance, or persecution. They may even be afraid of repercussions. However, I am not. Part of my job as a parent is to protect my child. When I send my child here for the day, I place her in your care with the hope that she will not be faced with certain adult situations. I don't allow her to view R-rated movies, partly because they may contain nudity. Why would or should I be okay with her being alone, unsupervised, in a state of undress with a biological male present? Also, in a state of undress. Mr. Birch, you may have deemed yourself a professional in the field of psychology and the counseling of transgender students to determine the legitimacy and commitment to transgender status. However, I know nothing about this biological male you want to give permission to be alongside my daughter while she is in a bathroom stall with pants and undergarments around her ankles. K through 12 children should not be faced with these issues on a daily basis. School presents enough pressure as it is. There is an unwritten basic human right to use the restroom and undress in a private locker room with your own biological gender, and then there is special privilege of expecting to use any gendered facility you choose. My child's rights do not end where another child's begins. Your child's mental health and anxiety are not more important than my child's or anyone else's at this school. I'm not sure how I would react if a biological male entered while I was undressing. How can you expect these young people to process all of this? None of this belongs in schools. The human brain does not finish developing until the age of 25. A minor can't make choices or decisions on many subjects. They can't foresee the long-term consequences of their choices. Parents do what is in the best interest of their children. We look out for them, stand up for them. Mr. Burks, for you to say no kids have come to you with opinions is truly irrelevant. I choose what's best for my child as a parent. You are an educator, and my daughter's education does not include learning how to deal with a biological male in the restroom or locker room. People want to feel kids are more resilient these days. It's probably by the same adults in therapy for all of their issues that they haven't resolved from their childhood that they've been carrying around since childhood. Kids are not more resilient. They are dealing with so much more than we did. Just the internet alone has changed kids. Kids are rarely asked or don't know how to express their feelings. Transgenders will often still be sexually attracted to the opposite of their biological sex. Where does this leave my daughter if she finds herself in a compromised situation in a state of undress with a teenage biological male with raging teenage hormones that finds himself attracted to her? By the therapist who specializes in transgenders' statement from last board meeting, these kids are often suicidal and homicidal. You think it's okay to put our children in this type of unmonitored situation? I have no faith in your ability to keep my child safe. And just as a side note, I used the restroom that was down this hallway. The door of the stall wouldn't close.
Wow.
Wouldn't close, much less lock. So there were no privacy, zero privacy there if anyone had walked in.
Thank you, Mrs. Babb. Mr. Fergus, I know we've had some high school vandalism issues with that restroom. We have Mr. Burt take a look at that one if you want right away. I haven't been in that restroom today at all. I haven't been in that restroom in weeks, but take a look at that one. Alex Ryan?
So my name is Alex Ryan. I use they, them, theirs pronouns. I am the chair of Nicholas Central Ohio, which supports all students in K-12 schools. I just want to say thank you. And just, it's a long day. It's 10:30. I teach in school, and I have to teach tomorrow. And there's a lot of folks here who I believe have never been in a classroom before. And that is sassy, but I want to say that people are parents, and that's great, because I'm not a parent. But I know what kids are like inside the school. And I work with elementary schoolers, and they're fine. They all call me Mix Ryan. They all have no issues. I promise your kids will be fine as well. So Bethel Local Schools has the B statements. Be kind, be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. I believe that letting trans students, or just students in general, use the bathroom is following all 4 of those guidelines. By being kind to others, we are making sure that everyone is safe. In the high school handbook, on page 20, it says, the code attempts to protect individual rights by ensuring each student has the right to an education and the commissary responsibility not to interfere with or threaten the education of others by personal actions. Using the bathroom is a personal action. I promise you, kids just want to go in and pee. I mean, some of them want to mess around, but those are actions that can be used as consequences. We're not just letting anyone into bathrooms. By a statement, I was talking to one of the trans students at this meeting who should not have been here because God bless their hearts. What a hard thing to hear from adults. Only out trans people can go into the bathrooms, and that's by their principal gives them an okay to be in the bathroom. Not just any random person can just go into the bathroom. As another note, adults are not allowed in the same restrooms as kids. High schoolers shouldn't even be in the elementary schoolers. That's an issue in itself. And it's true. As well, if an adult is in the bathroom using the same restroom, there are staff restrooms. I promise guests can use them. I want to make sure that that no one also said homicidal. Kids are suicidal, not homicidal. No one's being murdered, promise you that. And no one has an agenda. We just want to make sure that kids can pee. And a lot of you mentioned that your kid is coming all the way home, having UTIs, not being able to use the bathroom. That's the same thing for our trans kids. We're on the same playing field. We're making sure that women are safe because if boys who identify as boys, not trans women, if boys who identify as boys go into the bathroom and mess with your girls, that is an issue. They can't just say they're trans because they have to be out. So there are already steps in place for kids to out themselves to use the bathroom. So that's not saying that there are kids who aren't out using the bathroom because they're not trying to do that. And just as a reminder that our kids matter, all of the kids. And I know that you think that this is a small minority, but I see kids in elementary school who are transitioning. And it's amazing. It is amazing. And I want you to be like, oh, they must be confused. They're not. And if they are, the worst thing that we have done to them as a supportive adult is support them. Because guess what? Parents who don't support kids end up with stray kids. They end up with dead kids.
Yeah, we reviewed that.
They end up with dead kids. The rate of suicide is so high. The rate of murder, the trans women are being murdered by straight people and cis people. So that's also a real thing. So we want to make sure that we're all on the same page. We don't want anyone to be harmed in the bathroom. I got you. I don't want to be harmed in the bathroom either. So let's work together to make sure that everyone has the policy of I go to the bathroom to pee and then I come out. I don't go around and play in there. That's a thing that as teachers we can teach the kids. You go into the bathroom, you go pee. This person goes to the bathroom, they go pee. And then we can trust them to use the bathroom by themselves. That's a privilege. They can all use the bathroom. And elementary schoolers, they don't go to the bathroom by themselves anyway. We all go as a group. We go walk in, one person in, one person in. I promise, they're gonna be fine. I'm never scared. We're gonna get through this together, but we have to let people pee. Thank you so much.
And I am not local. I am from Kent, Ohio. I drove 3 hours to be here primarily to tell the students here that they are loved, that they have value, that they are worthy, and that it breaks my heart that they have to listen to some of the hateful messages that people have been spewing last month and this month. When the gentleman was reading to you the Bible verses, I'd like to add to that. Look at Isaiah 56 and Acts 8. The one woman who was here who was a counselor was talking about some of the consequences. The obscenely high suicide rates amongst transgender people. The obscenely high homeless rates amongst transgender kids. That's bad fruit. You can read about bad fruit in Matthew 7. And lastly, I'm not going to take up too much time. Lastly, I would like to say thank you to the board. I was looking earlier at frequently asked questions page on your Facebook or on your website, and it seemed very well thought out. The policy that has been in place for quite a long time seems to be pretty level-headed and seems to be well thought out and fair. And I'd just like to thank you for that. And again, please relay to the students my feelings and express to them that they do have value, that they are worthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ellinger. Siobhan Boyd Nelson.
Good evening. My name is Siobhan Boyd Nelson. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I serve as the Deputy Director at Equality Ohio Education Fund. I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening. First, I'd like to reference the superintendent's letter on the website. Actually, it's in the handbook. And one of the statements in there is, if you want the students to take pride in themselves and in their thing that this entire board wants and that everybody wants for these students. We want students that have the ability to take pride in themselves and in their schools. I'd also like to reference the beliefs of the school board. One of your goals is a safe learning environment where students exercise respect and responsibility. You also believe that education is a lifelong process. We at Equality Ohio also believe that education is a lifelong process, and that includes education about ourselves and about one another and the people that we share this planet with and share our communities with. At Equality Ohio, we believe that many of the questions, many of the fears that I've heard here tonight, there's been a lot of talk of safety. I too am a mother of a teenage son who's actually in college. I've heard that and I understand it. And at Equality Ohio, we want to address those fears. We want to address the questions that people have about LGBTQ community. What does it mean for a trans student to use a restroom that aligns with their gender identity? What are the harms if that student isn't given access to that restroom? What do we know to be true about trans students who are supported by their schools and by the adults in their lives? That information is out there and we would love to provide it to you. With UTIs and not using the restroom every day, and they do have an access to a restroom and are safe in the school building along with every other student. We want to provide an opportunity to discuss the realities of the law. We want to get past the fear that is gripping so many of us in the room. Because when we talk to one another, when we get to know one another, when we really understand and see each other as individuals, as humans, as the neighbors that God has called each other to love, then we can get past that fear. We can gather a sense of safety as a community, and we can come together to support the most marginalized young people in this school. And finally, I would just to say that as a Black woman, it is quite disturbing to sit in this room and to hear people say that they want to live in a community where majority rules. And I'd just like people to take a moment to think about what our community, what our society would be like for everyone in this room if we still lived in a society where majority ruled and no one stood up to advocate for the most marginalized, traumatized, and vulnerable among us. And that's exactly who our trans students are. Thank you for your policies. Thank you for listening to us. Thank you for the hard work that you do.
Thank you, Ms. Ball-Nelson. Ellen Stevenson.
Hi, I'm Ellen. I'm a member of this community for 30 plus years. I have a child with special needs that spent most of his time at another school, came back to get him to graduate, walked into the counselor's office, and she didn't have a clue who my son was, or that he was an IEP, and that probably senior government wasn't going to work for him. So I think we need to get to know our kids. But one of the things I want to go back to is I was here last month. I walked in the door, people everywhere, and I knew that I needed to fill out a piece of paper in order to talk at the meeting. But nobody seemed to know where that piece of paper was. Clue number one, the public wasn't welcome. I walked in, and there were about 40 chairs set up, mass chaos, because you guys were trying to set up enough chairs for everybody. Okay, that kind of looked like you didn't, you weren't really expecting us to be here, and you weren't really sure you wanted us here. But one of the main things that hit me was when I looked at that stage, and the three of you were so close, and you could just gone just an inch closer, you'd been inside each other. While the other two board members were down at this end and about as far away as they could be, which gave the illusion, the visual, that you didn't really get along, and that bothers me. That is huge. You are our Board of Education. Your job is to work together for the betterment of this school and for the students. And it was very obvious that there was a big chasm between the two, and it broke my heart. And I'm glad that we've got things a little bit better tonight. I do appreciate that you guys were a little more intermingled tonight. I do appreciate that the sound system is working better. And I do ask that when we do the committee forum, because I do encourage it, because I encourage both sides to be able to speak, and both sides need to be keeping their ears and eyes open for what's going on. I feel very strongly that the students that are in the elementary and even into the middle school and kids in the high school need to be protected from each other. And I know I'm not the only one. I know there's staff that feel the same way. I have a child that has struggled with his identity, and he looks at me and he's like, "Mom, I know you love me." And I'm like, "Yeah, I absolutely do." But when he heard about the bathroom policy, I'm surprised you guys didn't hear him all over the community. He was very upset that his younger sister could possibly be subjected to that. We are not saying, I am not against, as I said, I've got LGBTQ. I mean, I've got friends that have been in the community. I have friends who have children in that community, and I still love them 100%. But I want to make sure that my daughter and your daughters and sons are all kept safe. One girl walks into a boys' restroom, all she has to do is say he did something. There doesn't even have to be proof. And unfortunately, that young man's life and his reputation is going to be scarred. So I just want you to think about that. And I just want you to make sure that you can keep the kids of this school safe. We can't expect one resource officer to do it. And I just think we all need to work together on that. And as I said, and I encourage transparency, because that this was talked about for several months before the community was made aware, put those of you on the board in a bad light. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. No, I want Bethel to be the best, okay? Be the best bees we can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevenson. Terry Essex?
Hi, thank you for giving me this time. I was going to address this later on in my statement, but given what has you guys seen transpired, I think we can see where the hate, the labels, and the name calls come from on this issue. If you oppose it, then all of a sudden you are their mortal enemy, and the name calling starts. Exhibit A. So I thought that we could agree in this room on one thing, that all of us should be here because not only do we care about the safety of our child, but every child that goes to Bethel. Clearly that's not the case. As a parent, we act in our child's best interest. We're their advocates, their protectors, their caretakers, their mouthpiece until they're old enough, mature enough to do those things for themselves. Which brings me to my first question. What kind of parent or so-called advocate would want to put a fragile child in a potential situation where they can be bullied, assaulted, name-called, made feel less than, intentionally? Isn't that exactly what your bathroom and locker room policy does? Let's face it, some kids are just cruel. They are. They act out of peer pressure, immaturity, trying to be cool, whatever the reason is. And shame on all of you or anyone that would ever want to put a child to potentially go through that. Accommodations have been made. Why would, for the life of me, I cannot figure out why you would not want your child to be in a private bathroom where there's some adult supervision. There's no chance of that happening. But no, that accommodation's that's not good enough. There's going to be no whispers or laughing or pointing. If that is okay at all in anyone, any You're not your child's advocate. You're not your child's protector. You're your child's abuser. Clearly, you are willing to sacrifice your child's mental health for a cause, to get a policy passed. Not as a parent of a child that's been abused. I'm here to tell you, once that switch has been flipped, there ain't no turning it off. There ain't no, when they get out of high school, it gets better. It's with them. It changes who they are. And that's forever. And don't act like things don't go on in these bathrooms. Because I had a child here in 2011 that was physically assaulted in the bathroom right here at Bethel Local Schools. Check your records, there was a big old to-do over it. So it happens, okay? Let's not be blinded and act like it doesn't. It absolutely does. So, instead of putting more safety measures in place to curb the stuff that's already going on in the bathrooms, we're going to now want to remove some of these and let anyone go to the bathroom with how they feel. Also, for school counselors and some teachers that will remain nameless, you don't have the qualifications to counsel these children, whether they be transgender, gay, bisexual, sexually abused, emotionally abused. Please stop. It's above your pay grade. Sitting in a session talking to these children about how they feel is not living it. I lived it. And for the woman that was here last month that said she mothered these children, I'd like to get her name, because as I went back and I went through the grand jury testimony and the police records and the trial, and I couldn't figure out where she was. Nobody, her name wasn't on the list, because it was just mine advocating for my son and what had happened to him. Okay? So I would believe she owes myself and everyone, every parent in this room, an apology, because she wasn't there when I signed my son into the psych ward on suicide watch. She wasn't there. I did that. One of the main rules of parenting is you don't have kids deal with adult issues. Yet you want to force these situations on these children that they don't have the maturity or understanding to do. This is a K through 12 school. It is inappropriate to have a billboard in the hallway where any child of any age can see it talking about insects engaging in gay sex. And the fact that I have to tell you that is a why is it even stated when a child
Ryan, is it last summer? I'm sure it's wrong. What is it?
Not an easy one.
What was it again?
Lost stutter.
Lost stutter, thank you.
Deep breath under for something else. I've never done this, so am I allowed to ask you guys questions, or is it just, do I just?
You just have to direct comments to me, sir, I'm sorry.
No worries. I'm here about the annexation. Switch it back a little bit. I guess is there, I've been to a couple meetings, I've been to the New Carlisle meeting, I'm a township resident. I've got a 5-year-old that'll be starting kindergarten next year, I've got nieces that go here. I guess it's kind of a playing chase a little bit. New Carlisle sent me to come here. One of the members of the school board was at the meeting last week as well. So I guess my question is there anything being done on the school side of things to potentially stop? I don't think we can stop the annexation, but is there anything that we can do to stop the kids from all these new homes from flooding our school that my daughter is about to start at next year, that my niece currently spends part of her day in one of those trailers back there. So I've gone to New Carlisle, they sent me to Bethel Township sent me to you guys, and it's not your fault, but the frustration's starting to build a little bit, because all of a sudden, if we don't do anything soon, we're not gonna be able to do anything, and all of a sudden, we're just gonna have, 700, 800 more homes here, another 1,800 kids. And that's just gonna compound all the other issues that we've got going on. So I guess my question is there anything going on that the school board is planning on doing or addressing with the state to ask for rezoning? For them to go to Tecumseh or Huber Heights, or are we just?
I can tell you, I can speak historically.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that last month we just met with the township trustees and had a conversation. Historically, the position of the board has been that the residents of the district and the district territory, I guess you could call it, we welcome students of Bethel. That is the position of the board. We did pass a resolution when the annexation on along 40 in between 201 and 202 came up the last time. To slow growth, as in whether they can do anything about the rate at which they allow permits for building to happen, until say 40, 201, 202 could be better equipped to handle the traffic that was going to come should that annexation pass.
Got it.
So we would be probably looking, I imagine, on our next agenda, our next work session, to have a conversation about a similar resolution. Again, now that second resolution on 40 has actually been filed, it is now time for us to consider that again. But it's our understanding as well that in Carlisle, those annexations have not been filed. Officially, we know they're coming, but until they actually come, I don't think there's a lot.
So, and I was trying to follow along with you. So if I'm understanding, the Bethel School supports bringing all these more.
I don't think anyone's saying is we are supporting and want all that growth that rapidly, because we understand the funding comes like 2 years after the student arrives, and that's obviously a difficult situation for us. However, to say we don't want your kids is also obviously a very difficult position for us to take.
Why?
Because this is Bethel, this is our.
I understand it's Bethel, I live here and I get that.
Right.
My point is why is that difficult to say? I'm saying it, I don't want them. I'm sure they're fantastic kids, but by the time all that minuscule tax revenue that we're gonna get, the new Carlisle's gonna get most of it, comes in, my daughter's gonna be in 5th grade in that trailer that my niece is in right now. You guys probably won't be up here, and somebody else will be dealing with it. I've only got 1 minute, so I'm gonna get what I wanna say. My point is that there's a lot of residents that don't want this, and you represent the residents. You represent us. So to just make a blanket statement and say, we want them because we're Bethel, is just false. It's just not true. Because I guarantee most of these folks out here, matter of fact, a lot of them have got students just leave.
Historically, what the position has been. That's all I'm saying is historically. And I think historically the thought has been every time you give up land, at some point, eventually we would only have Bethel where the building is, right? Like at some point, at the rate annexation is coming, the district would be eaten away at a point to where there wouldn't be any district left, right? I think traditionally that was the thought, but at some point there'd be no Bethel left because the annexation is coming so rapidly, right? So that's my understanding of the historical position. I could be dead wrong.
I got you, so I guess that leads me back to my original question. What are we doing from the school district, from the Board of Education standpoint to at least look and say, hey, I understand my time's up, but what are we doing to at least look at it to say, hey, is this the right thing, instead of just saying, historically, that's what we do, so we're gonna let it come in. Because, I mean, come on.
We'll put it on the agenda. This is me where we try and like crank out the votes in the business, so we'll have a discussion.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your time, and thank you. And
perhaps maybe the work session, and we can have more dialogue.
I would be more than happy to.
That'd be great.
But we're on a shop clock.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Okay, that was our last paper. Thank you, Mr. Lostoner. That was our last paper, so our next agenda item So I'm hearing no items for executive session. Okay, we have no reason for executive session this evening, so we'll move on to the next item, which is motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Elam has a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Ms. Franz? I'm sorry, Mr. Franz, I'm sorry. So motion to adjourn by Mr. Elam, seconded by Mrs. Franz. Can you call the roll, please?